Can we talk about this book, please? Hey, we're over here today. Hey, can we talk about this book, please? This is OtherLand, City of Golden Shadow by Tad Williams. It is a fantastic book, and it just might be your next favorite read. I'm going to tell you why. This book was written by Tad Williams, author of the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy.
I'm Tad. I'm still Tad. I'm always Tad. I wake up every damn day, and I'm still Tad, despite all my prayers.
Quick buzzword pitch is it's a moderately fast-paced, character-driven sci-fantasy story where a girl's brother gets kidnapped in a VR world, and she has to try and get him back, ends up uncovering the rigmarole and behind the scenes involved in that. Incredibly well written. This is one of the most compelling books I've ever read. One of the few books where at the end of the chapter, I want to go to the next chapter no matter how tired I am, no matter what. I just want to keep going. There were multiple nights that I stayed up for hours reading this book because it's just so damn good. So good, in fact, that I have only read book one, which will come into play later. I really want to read book two, but I'm going to give some conspiracy theory-esque ideas of what's going to happen later on in the series. And that only works if I haven't read on. Yet, I love it so much that I bought a signed copy on eBay. And I bought a signed copy of book 3 on eBay. And I have built a box for the series because I'm just crazy and I love it that much. I'm so excited to keep reading in that. We're going to get into some spoiler-free why you should read thoughts on the book. Then we're going to move into a spoiler section. Last, we're going to have my conspiracy theories in the vein of Pepe Sylvia. If you are a sci-fi reader or a fantasy reader and you don't really read much of the other genre, but you kind of want to get into it, this is a great in-between book. I'm a big fantasy reader, don't read much sci-fi. Pretty much it's The Expanse and that's it. I just got into Sun Eater, which was so good. Book 1, everybody says book 1 is the worst. Loved it. I'm too easy on books. But this one's really good and you should read it. This is just a great crossover between sci-fi and fantasy. Since it's set in VR, you have a bunch of worlds you get to experience throughout, like Tolkien-esque fantasy worlds, ones that what we think the future will look like, just all kinds of things. So it's very different from your typical sci-fi in terms of setting, I'd say. The main story does take place in South Africa. I haven't read any books other than this that take place in South Africa. For some reason, I've always had a fascination with it. Like I've always liked movies that take place there and just, I don't know, it's a fascinating place to me. But anyway, the book takes place in near future South Africa. VR has taken over basically the way that we interface with all electronics and computers to a point that there's bombings and fake bomb threats at the school where the main character teaches all the time. And her little brother says, oh yeah, our school blew up the other day. Can't differentiate between a real world bomb threat and his school on the net being blown up. This was also written in the 90s, so it's really fascinating to see the technological advancements and things that he had predicted in this book that have come true. And just to see things that I didn't realize were prevalent back then that were like furries. Furries appear in this book, and it's very funny. This isn't singular POV, by the way. That's not necessarily a deterrent. It's just something that I had never heard before. Anyone who talks about this book always talks about the A plot. There is a B and a C plot. There are other characters that we get the POV from, just not nearly as much as from not nearly as much as from the main character. And that's who our story is really focused on. The other people do play a part, but it's in that, I'll get into that in the spoiler parts. I've heard this one referred to as Ready Player One without the 80s references. I have not read Ready Player One, but I have watched it a couple times and that does feel kind of fitting. So maybe if you liked Ready Player One, but you want a more grown-up version of it, that could be a reason to try this book. This book is definitely not for the faint of heart chapter finisher. What I mean by that is you got some like 30 and 40 page chapters. I like a good 10, 15 page chapter that I know I can get to the end of it. And if I got to get up in 5 or 10 minutes, well, that's all right. Let me just finish this chapter up. Cool, I'll go. Honestly, that wasn't a problem for me. It was so compelling that I just wanted to keep reading. I was with him the whole way. But there are times where you're maybe with a character you don't want to be with at that point, and you got a while that you're with that character. Or if you only get to read for like 10, 20 minutes at a time, you're going to be putting that book down in the middle of every single chapter. One more deterrent is this wouldn't really work as a standalone in my opinion. There's a big cliffhanger at the end. Things that I thought would wrap up in the book were not wrapped up at all. I realized, this is one part in a big story. I thought it was one story in a big story, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't. Anyway, I don't mind that because I'm really excited to keep going and I loved book 1 so much. I am so glad with the size of these books and that there are 3 more. If you just want to try it out and you're like, I don't know if I want to keep going. If you just want to try out Tad Williams, maybe try out one of his standalones, because this is a big book and it does not satisfy you with the ending. It's a good ending. It's a really good ending. It just leaves you wanting more. So in conclusion, for the spoiler-free section, it's a great sci-fantasy read. One of the most compelling books I've read. I gave it 4 stars because there were a few times where we were with some of our B and C plots more than I wanted to be, but that was pretty much the only drawback. It might be a 5-star read for you. Who knows? It's a fantastic book, and either way, you should definitely give it a chance. I am so excited to get on with the rest of the series. Now into the spoiler section. So if you have not read this book, click off, or if you don't care, keep watching. But why would you be watching this? Because if you don't care to read the book, I know you don't care about watching my videos. So what are you doing here? Delete YouTube. Go on a walk. So I'm very curious about the Bushmen. They have been, we've gotten a little peek behind the curtain so far, and they have obviously got a lot more to do with the story. All the stories that, I'm sure I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, but I'm going to say Kabu, because when I listened to Tad Williams reading it on YouTube, actually, which is a great way to experience the book if you want to look that up. It also starts with, like, every video starts with 20 minutes of him just rambling and talking to the people watching his live stream. It's amazing. But anyway, I'm very curious about what the Bushmen have to do with everything. They've obviously got something to do with it, because with the way that Kabu is telling the stories, like, there's no way that that's just not going to come back later, right? It's Chekhov's gun. But it's Kabu's story. Kabu's story. So yeah, I'm very curious about that. I also love in the intro, if you have a physical version, if you look in the intro, Tad Williams was saying, I did take a few, made a few changes here and there to what the Bushmen have in their stories or believe, but if I have misrepresented or offended in any way, then I have failed. And I think that's a great sentiment and made me really believe that he was trying to portray them truthfully and didn't have ill intent of just, using a different group of people just as a plot beat, I was a little disappointed with Steven's plotline. I thought that we'd, by the end of the book, he'd be back and then cool, he's on our adventure. But no, the book ends with them in the ecto goo, and Steven's still in his coma state. Like, where is he? What's happening to him? I am very fascinated with this book. I really want to read on, and I'm glad that it opened up the door of, oh wait, what's actually going on behind the scenes? Now I'm a lot more curious about that. But I do kind of wish we got a more satisfying ending with him. I was a little disappointed there. Okay, now my conspiracy theories. No one was kidnapped. All of them went willingly. They're going through some type of initiation or testing process. Steven passed the process. He's through. He's gone. Like, he is not going to want to come back. Whenever we finally catch up to him, he's going to fight back and say, nope, I don't want to go with you. I'm staying here. He's got a bunch of clout probably where he is. He's some power figure or, like, looked up to. But he's probably being played by the person who's actually in charge. They make him, like, they're pulling the strings, setting him up, but then eventually they're going to betray him. He's going to realize he should have been friends with, or not been friends with. He should have stayed true to his sister. That's all happening. The reason that his friend, I don't remember his friend's name, but the reason his friend didn't want to talk when, it's been a while since I read this book. So the reason that Steven's friend doesn't want to talk to Rini is because they both went willingly. He didn't pass. He got sent back. He thinks that Steven is better off in this other world. So he's like, whatever, I got sent back. I don't want to get in trouble. Steven's better off there because he knows that, like, how to get Steven back. He just thinks he's better there, and he doesn't want to get himself in trouble anyway because he already failed. He can't get there, leave his friend where he's happy. So Steven's friend is definitely in on it, just failed, came back, all that. But go read this book. Well, if you're here, you should have read the book by now. What did you think of the book? Did you like it? Did you love it? I know you did. Bye.